What's going on, y'all? Machiavelli Mills TV, and I want to talk about Mr. Teddy Atlas, former trainer, Hall of Fame trainer, Teddy Atlas, commentator. Uh, he was on Vlad TV, and he was talking about when he was training Michael Moore to go against George Foreman, and how Michael Moore got stopped by George Foreman. And he was giving George Foreman his praise, but he went to say that George Foreman is greater than Mike Tyson, right? And this is a lot of the boxing debates that I like to have. I've told y'all that Mike was a phenomenal specimen, a absolute dynamo that was necessary to progress the sport. He was. He was a like you were people were enamored with him, with his physical ability, his speed, his ferociousness, the intimidation. He had the whole package, majority of the whole package, not the majority of the whole package he had, right? There were a few things I feel like he was lacking in certain areas, not even just do with skill, but with mentality, mindset, mental fortitude, etc. That I felt like other fighters had better willpower. They were more resilient than Mike in a lot of ways, right? But yeah, Mike was phenomenal. But I always tell y'all that Mike has to be probably one of the most overrated heavyweights in the last 30 years. What do I mean by that? Mike Tyson was outstanding. He was the youngest heavyweight champion ever at 20 years old. And he was the youngest heavyweight champion for a reason, because he was that damn good. But people often think that Mike is like the greatest heavyweight to ever live, or the second greatest heavyweight to ever live, which is simply not true when you look at how Evander Holyfield was a better heavyweight champion than Mike. Was he better, more exciting than Mike? No, he wasn't producing the knockouts that Mike was, but he was more resilient. He had better wins. He rose to the occasion better than Mike did. Lennox Lewis, two guys in his era, they rose to the occasion better than Mike ever did. You know what I mean? And their career spanned longer than Mike's. And so, but people often look at the highlights and they like, oh my God, he's the greatest thing. He's the second greatest heavyweight to ever live, and he's not. And in fact, Teddy Atlas is right. George Foreman was a better heavyweight champion than him. Let me say this, man. George Foreman, you could argue he had two Hall of Fame careers. Coming up, the way he destroyed Joe Frazier, like Joe wasn't shit. Like when you watch how he annihilated Joe Frazier. Watch how George Foreman annihilated Joe Frazier. Like smoking Joe Frazier. Like he wasn't nothing. The way he was knocking him down. Joe was flying around all around the ring. Because like George was a brute. Now people look at what Muhammad Ali did. It shows you the greatest Muhammad Ali. Being able to beat him in Zaire, right? What happened? But when you saw what he was doing, the way he smoked Ken Norton coming up like this, people were afraid of George Foreman, right? And he was walking through dudes. Then think about when he came back after being gone for a decade. George Foreman retired at 28 years old, came back at 38, came back whooping and smoking dudes. And this is the thing, man, like George was never faster than Mike Tyson. He wasn't ever as fundamentally sound as Mike. He wasn't as sharp as Mike at certain things. He wasn't, right? But his power and his mindset, his mentality was way better than Mike's. You can hit George with some of your best shit. George, keep coming. He gonna keep coming forward and keep finding ways to time you and hit you and knock the fucking daylight out of you. That fight with Evander Holyfield, he was getting hit with everything but the kitchen sink. And the way he was landing blows back at Evander, not wilting, staying on his feet, like the way he was still fighting, digging deep, that's champion shit. And I think when Mike got into certain situations, he didn't respond the same way that George Foreman did. He got with some resiliency. I think Mike, you can see sometimes he would mail it in. Look at the second fight. Biting Evander Holyfield because he getting beat and he don't know what else to do with it. It's always because of the head, but no, Mike was out there. He already got smoked the first time, got stopped. He saw the shit was going the same way. He looked for a way out. George Foreman never looked for a way out in fights. I hope I'm not mixing up George Foreman and Evander Holyfield name when I'm talking. I know which one is which, but George Foreman never looked for a way out in fights. Like, for real, like, just think about it. The man won. He beat Michael Moore. How old George was? 45 years old when he beat Michael Moore? I'm finna make sure I look at this right now. I believe he was 45 years old when he beat Michael Moore. That shit is brilliant. And see, that's when I talk about people, people marvel at Mike Tyson's highlights. Yes, they're outstanding. But I think sometimes people, and I wrote it down here, sometimes people look at the highlights and they think they tell the story, of the fights, right? Of his career, oh my God, because of these highlights. No, man. George Foreman, he gave you a great highlight by knocking out Michael Moore with a jab. But it was an all-time historically great achievement to go with that. Mike, being youngest heavyweight champion of the world is historically great without question. But Mike, first of all, Mike beat mostly during his career B-level competition. Let's be real. Because people will tell me, Mike was just, oh my God, he was smoking everybody. And I always say, who did he beat though? Who did he beat? You know what I mean? A lot of people, Mike Tyson fanatics, never really watched his fights. They don't understand, who he was fighting against during that time period. They make assumptions based off highlights. And they figured that he could have beaten anybody because of what the highlights dictate. The most elite champion that Mike beat was 38-year-old Larry Holmes. The most elite accomplished champion he beat was 38-year-old Larry Holmes, who was coming out of retirement at that time, right? Now, his best wins are Trevor Berbick, Razor Ruddock, Frank Bruno, Michael Spinks, who was coming off a run as a historically great light heavyweight champion. Michael Spinks was not a historically great heavyweight champion. He was not. He made his name and bread and butter as a light heavyweight champion, and so he moved up the heavyweight, but his bread and butter wasn't that. You know what I mean? Those wins that I named, Razor Ruddock, Frank Bruno, Trevor Berbick, Michael Spinks, those were very good wins. Very good wins, but they were not great wins for Mike. They weren't. He never beat an elite fighter. None of the guys I mentioned are historically significant wins for Mike. They weren't. Like I said before, Mike defeated B-level champions, and when he went up against A-level competition, he got beat up. And he beat Tony Tucker, Tyrell Biggs, still B-level competition. When you look at, when he went against Holyfield twice, he lost, and I don't want to hit him about no steroids, because I tell y'all all the time, if you think Mike Tyson, it was no drug testing during this time period. Floyd Mayweather made drug testing in boxing popular. Before him, it was really no drug testing. Dudes come in there however they want to come in. Do you think Mike Tyson trainers, knowing that this is a steroid, people are not getting tested, do you think they let him come in there without being on some type of enhancements? Do you really think that? I don't care what Mike looked like as a kid. I'm talking about, do you really think during his career Mike went on no type of enhancements? You got to be out of your fucking mind if you think that. I don't care how much of a fanatic you think. None of them dudes was clean, man. None of them dudes. Look at all the Roy Jones. None of them was clean, man. Look at how they was looking. None of them was clean. So it wasn't just steroid. Oh, he lost because steroids. Evander was older than Mike. He was 35 years old and beat Mike soundly. He lost against Lennox Lewis. He lost against Buster Douglas, who Buster was never no elite guy. He had a lot of heart in that fight. I would say he had a lot of heart. He could fight. He was a good fighter. He was a very good fighter, but he wasn't great. But on that night, he whooped Tyson ass, and because he was fighting for more than what he usually was fighting for. His mother had lost, going through a divorce, falling on troubled times. People thinking you just gonna be a pushover for Mike Tyson. They thinking it's over with. They thinking you are cooked, and you want to prove the world wrong, and he shocked the world. But then look at what Evander Holyfield did to Buster Douglas. So I know people gonna make him excuses. Well, Buster achieved all he wanted to achieve. No, man. Mike was never supposed to lose to Buster Douglas. You can use the long count if you want to. You know what I'm saying? Mike should have never been in no real competitive fight with Buster like that. If you say he is who he is. I ain't gonna say should have been no real competitive fight. He should have never been in no danger with Buster Douglas like that. Not like that. Look what Evander did to Buster Douglas right after that. What Buster Douglas got knocked out in? Like the third round against Evander? What the fuck? Let me look it up, because I'm trying to remember. Let me see. When Evander Holyfield beat Buster Douglas, what round was that in? Like the second or third round, I felt like it was. Let's see. When he beat Buster Douglas, the third round. Yeah. Stopped him. You know what I mean? So, yeah, like, come on. And George Foreman, to be great and, like, to take a 10-year break and still come back and be the dude, that's why y'all can't talk that oh, Mike was, he went to jail. You can't talk that shit to me. George Foreman was sitting around talking and speaking the word of God, building youth centers for kids, just being a role model and being an advocate for kids for 10 years. Renewed his faith in Jesus Christ, all of that, and still came out there out of 10 years and became heavyweight champion at 45 years old. Mike Tyson's, like, he flamed out quick. Mike's prime was very, very short. He peaked extremely quick. Now, if y'all want to talk about Mike Tyson prime, lasted from 86 to 88 for real. But none of the guys he beat in that time frame were great heavyweight champions. Like, weren't 86 to 88, 86 to 89. That was Mike's 86, 89, whatever, 86, 88. That was Mike's prime. Look at it. Look when he was 35. Look how Mike was looking at 35 compared to how George Foreman was looking at 38, 40, 41. Look at it. George Foreman really posed the one against Shannon Briggs. I don't know how the hell Shannon and Cannon Briggs got that victory. George supposed to beat him at 48 years old. He supposed to win that fight. He supposed to win that fight and been heavyweight champion. For real. Again, at 48 years old, Joe. That's what should have went down. Look at how he ran through Jerry Cooney, Dwight Muhammad Cowee. I feel like hold on one second. Yeah, man, like I'm looking at that, like the way because Michael Moore had already beaten Evander Holyfield before that. Big George dropped his ass with that. I said, oh man, listen. Over it, baby. Good night. Take the L out of lover. You know, but I think Mike is so beloved because of the impact he had. Kid Dynamite, man. The knockouts he had were spectacular. But George Foreman was a better heavyweight champion than him. So that's why people be like, oh, Mike, that's the greatest heavyweight ever lived. No, he was not. He flamed, like, he was great for a while, but he flamed out, burnt out quick, and he never really beat any historically great heavyweight champions. The times he did, he lost. Lennox was a better Lennox. I be saying Lennox. Lennox was better than him. Evander was better than him as a fighter. You could talk that, he went to jail, man. Lennox was always going to be a problem for him, especially when he was training with Emmanuel Stewart. He was going to be a problem for Mike. He was never going to be able to bully or hold Evander Holyfield. Wasn't going to work. And you weren't going to even hold George Foreman. Big George wasn't having none of that shit, man. He wasn't fast. He didn't have the best technique, but he was effective. His timing was excellent. Power, top notch. When Evander Holyfield said he got hit by him, he felt like he knocked his teeth out. You hear me? Like, that wasn't no joke, man. Dude, big man was putting us to sleep. Like they took some Ambien or some goddamn melatonin for real, man. You know what I mean? But Mike Tyson's aura was godlike to people. You know what I mean? He was extremely skilled, but he used bullying tactics to get the advantage over an opponent. And the best way to beat a bully is to beat them mentally. Bullies are used to having physical advantages in situations and intimidation on their side. Once that does not work, they don't have much else to go to. When Mike knew you were not intimidated by Mike, and you could take his punches and you could be able to dish punches back, he knew he was in for some trouble. You know what I mean? They don't have much to turn to get the outcome of the fight. You know, and so once Evander Holyfield made it clear he was not going to get bullied, he wasn't going to get hold, Mike knew he was in for a fight. That's why they said, after he got stopped in the first fight, that's why he bit Evander Holyfield, because he was looking for a way out, because he didn't know what to do. Big George said, I don't give a fuck what's going on, man. We're going to figure this out. I'm cracking you. What's cracking? At 45 years old. That's what a champion is.